Hi all, welcome to Horizon Online Learning Academy. In this session, we are going to look at three major terms, realism, naturalism and magic realism. All these three terms are interconnected, so it's easy to remember all these three together by comparing and contrasting. Let's look at the first term, realism. Realism is a representation of reality. It depicts reality as faithful as possible. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre has a quote like this: I'm not an angel, I asserted. I will not be one till I die. I will be myself. Here, what is Charlotte Bronte trying to show? She wants to assert the fact that no woman is perfect. She is questioning, problematizing the ideal womanhood. So in that sense, realism is a reaction against romanticism. The realists want us to see the real events, occurrences and behavior pattern of the human world, the real world. In romanticism, we have seen that the writers have their own freedom of imagination and creativity. They could go to any extent to give a life to their characters in their own way they like. It need not always to be the real world. We have seen um, in Ode to Nightingale, kids going to a world of Nightingale where he forget about all the weariness and fret of human world. The fever, fret and weariness of human world. But here, the characters always stand on earth, seeing, feeling, and taking part in the events of the real world. So it represents life and social world as it seems to the common reader. ഒരു വായനക്കാരൻ എങ്ങനെയാണോ തന്റെ ലോകത്തെ നോക്കിക്കാണുന്നത്, ആ കാഴ്ചയെയാണ് റിയലിസ്റ്റ് നോവലുകൾ പ്രസന്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് നമ്മുടെ മുന്നിൽ. According to Gustave Flaubert, the French realist, reality is essentially depressing. യാഥാർത്ഥ്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് it's quite depressing and disappointing. So the realist novels depicts the dullness of the human world. Realism can be studied in two historical registers. The first one is French realism, while the second one is British realism. French realism actually started with the writings of Balzac, Stendhal, Flaubert, etc. It is there where realism began. The race of realism began in France. They depicted, these writers, the writers of early 19th century, depicted the depressing nature of reality, while the mid-19th century writers of England, that is British realism, depicted the social realism and amelioration of the society, that is the betterment or the improvement of the society. The major writers were Dickens, Hardy, George Eliot, Anthony Trollope, etc. So in these realistic novels, both in French realism and British realism, the characters, plot, setting and language are realistic. You can see all the layerings of the society, all the layering of the society, of this social life, social class, you can say class distinctions, gender conflicts, problematizing of gender, then the old versus modernity, modernity versus postmodernity, all these kinds of conflicts and behavior pattern are depicted in realist novels. Some of the examples are given here. we already said that the French novelists began the wave. The writers like Balzac and Stendhal began the wave, and one of the most finest of realistic novel, which published in 1857, was Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Madame Bovary, which was published in 1857. The year is very important, and the writer too. We have to keep both of these things in our mind, and it is supposed to be the first important realist novel. In the novel, the character named Emma wants to find a man who matches her romantic ideals, but she fails to find one. Here, this makes the reader accepting the situation as a realist one. We know that no man is perfect. No man is perfect. No man is complete. So we might have um, our own expectations about our partner. Likewise, Emma had expectations, but and she went in search of her life partner who would match up her expectations, but she never found one. So this is realism. This is what Flaubert wants us to realize. So this novel portrays the depressing life of middle class, but Gustav is successful in making the novel a pleasant one. It's not a dull read, though the representation of the middle class is a dull one. And that is majorly because Flaubert believes that the life is depressing. Realism, if you look onto the realistic world, it is quite depressing. Another example for the realist novel is Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain is the pen name of Samuel Langhorne Clemens. So keep this in mind. The realist novel is Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which came out in 1884. We have other more examples here. George Eliot, again, it is a pen name of Mary Ann Evans. Her Middle Match, Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. Jane Eyre, which we have already discussed, Charlotte Bronte. Pickwick Papers, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, Jude Obscure by Thomas Hardy. All these novels comes under the genre realist novels. The next idea, the next term we are going to look at is naturalism. Naturalism is a movement followed and enhanced the principle of realism. As I told you, all these are interconnected terms. It is a movement that followed realism. It is a movement that enhanced the principle of realism. So, how it become an enhanced version of realism? It improves or it enhanced the depiction of life. കുറച്ചും കൂടി മൈന്യൂട്ട് ആയിട്ട് ജീവിതത്തെ ഡിസ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്തു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ലൈഫിനെ ഡിസ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്തു. നമ്മൾ റിയലിസത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞു it already depicts the real world, what we see around us. But naturalism gives us the minute description of the real world around us. So it is mainly because it is a product of post-Darwinian form of scientific determinism. This Darwinian theories, Darwin's work, Origin of Species, came out in the year 1859. This naturalism, this movement actually followed Darwin's theory. So it is a product of post-Darwinian form of scientific determinism. What is the scientific determinism? They believe that every event in nature has a cause for its occurrence. എല്ലാ നമ്മളുടെ ഈ നേച്ചറിൽ നടക്കുന്ന, പ്രകൃതിയിൽ നടക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ സംഭവങ്ങൾക്കും ഒരു കാരണമുണ്ട്. Okay. And this naturalists believe believe that human beings too are a part of nature. Since human beings are a part of nature, their acts too are predetermined. These the factors are beyond their control. It is beyond his or her control. We don't have any control over the events that are going to happen in our life. So this is scientific determinism. The writers detach themselves from the characters and follow a scientific tone. So they are not emotionally attached to the characters. The naturalists considered material world as the only real world. They don't look at any other place for their own inspiration. They had no faith in God, soul, or spiritual world. They can't even think about the spiritual world. They can't even think about the supernatural things. What they understand and what they explain is the real world. They say that nature has its own rules, and man is an offspring of nature. Just since man is an offspring of nature, it has since it has its own rules, we have to follow it. We don't have any other option. Nature actually has set all the rules for us, and we are just acting it out. We don't have any say over our fate. That is what the naturalists say. As I said in the previous slide, we don't have any control over our own fate. It is all predetermined. So naturalists believe that people are prisoners of their own biological inheritance and social environment. നമ്മൾ ഏത് കുടുംബത്തിലാണോ ജനിച്ചത്, ഏത് സമൂഹത്തിലാണോ ജനിച്ചത്, അവിടുത്തെ നിയമസംഹിതകളെ follow ചെയ്യാൻ നമ്മൾ നിർബന്ധിതരാണ്. We have the responsibility. So we cannot deviate as we like. And above all, each person inherits compulsive instincts like hunger and sex. We have our own basic instincts. All these will be exposed when we are exposed to different events in our life. Whenever we have extreme hunger, greed, sexual desire, sexual sex drive, all these things should be described in detail in the novel according to the naturalists. So they believe that the novelists are entitled to describe all human passions, emotions, and dimensions of human being, the behavior pattern of the actions of the conversations of human beings should be described in detail in all possible angles according to the naturalist. And usually working class where the subjects and the characters exhibit strong animal drives such as greed and sexual desire, and most of the time the endings of naturalist novels are tragic. Now let's look at certain examples of naturalist novel. The first and foremost one is D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's Lover. This novel is banned in England just because of its explicit description of sexuality. So we can just think what the naturalistic idea of writing a novel is. Other works are John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, Stephen Kane's Open Board, Emily Zola's, the most popular naturalist writer, Emily Zola's Nana, Kate Chopin's The Awakening, Norman Mailer's The Naked and the Dead, Gracie's An American Tragedy. Among these, in the examination point of view, Zola, Chopin, Mailer, Gracie all are important. So keep these works in mind when you think about, when you read about naturalism. The third term we are going to discuss is magic realism. Magic realism is a term originally applied in 1920s to a school of surrealist German painters. It was first applied to a school of surrealist German painters. What does magic realism do to writing? Magic realism fuses realistic view of modern world with magical elements. It mixes up reality with fantastic dreamlike events. As I told you, it began with surrealist German painters, but later it got expanded to prose fiction of writers like Borges in Argentina, then Marquez in Colombia, Günter Grass in Germany, Italo Calvino in Italy, etc. So it magical realism as a movement, as a technique was used by writers throughout the world. In such kind of work, we can see fables, folk tales, and myths being mixed up with the depiction of a real world. നമ്മളുടെ റിയൽ വേൾഡിൽ നമ്മൾ ഫെയറീസിനെ ഒക്കെ കാണും, മാലാഖമാരെ, ദൈവങ്ങളെ, ലെജൻസിനെ, നമ്മളുടെ മിത്തുകളിൽ മാത്രമുള്ള ലെജൻസിനെയൊക്കെ നമ്മളുടെ റിയൽ വേൾഡിൽ ഡെപിക്ട് ചെയ്യും. ആൻഡ് വാട്ട് ഈസ് ദ സ്പെഷ്യാലിറ്റി ഓഫ് ദിസ് കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് ഡിസ്ക്രിപ്ഷൻ? The writers, the authors always represent these magical elements as ordinary occurrences. We never feel that these are something extraordinary or odd. The reader accepts the marvelous, the fantastic as normal and common. This is what we call authorial reticence. Authorial reticence, which means the being uncommunicative. He never gives us a hint that this is something extraordinary, this is something new, supernatural, which never happens in a real world. We during the reading accept it as reality. The critique of dictatorial regimes were usually a sideline to the main plots. Dictatorial regimes in judgment, okay, bureaucracy, working, politics, okay, ഇതിന്റെ ഒരു സൈഡ് ലൈൻ ആണ്. മെയിൻ പ്ലോട്ടിന്റെ സൈഡിൽ you can see all these working together also. Another factor about this magical realism, the plot in this magic realist novels are, it never allows unity. It never allows unity. You cannot see a proper beginning, middle, or end. And it places the reader in a dilemma, in a confusion. The reader fails to know when the plot will advance or when the conflict will take place. That is the beauty of the novel. That is the beauty of this magical realism. We have a few examples here. It is popularized by George Louis Borges. We have a very popular example here, 100 Years of Solitude, written by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Love in the Time of Cholera by the same author. Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children is has magic realism in it. Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things has a magic realism in it. So all these writers mixed up reality with dreamlike events, fantastic events, magical events. So this is about magical realism. We will continue discussing the terms and movements in the coming sessions too. Thank you.